Hello, and thank you so much for tuning in to the She Can Ball podcast. I'm your host, Mahi Jariwala. Today, we're joined by NBA Hall of Famer Chris Mullin. So, yeah, thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
So, yeah, growing up in Brooklyn, what was the basketball culture like, and how did that influence your upbringing?
Yeah, growing up in my neighborhood in Brooklyn, we played all sports. Baseball season, we played Little League, and when the weather changed, we played basketball. I was on a swim team, played a lot of roller hockey in the street, a lot of stickball. So we were always outside. We had a very active neighborhood, but basketball was a big community sport for us. In the wintertime, obviously, we played in the gyms. In the summertime, we always played outside in the parks. So once the weather changed, we very rarely went inside to a gym. We always played outside in the city parks and just playing pickup all over the place. So it was a big, it was competitive, but it was also part of the culture, part of socializing, making friends, and something we did as neighborhood kids.
And where do you think you kind of took that step from it just being something that you play for fun to like something more serious?
Yeah, I had tremendous coaching when I was a youngster in grade school. That was the biggest influence in me choosing basketball over baseball and swimming were my coaches. Not only the way they taught me how to play, they taught me how to work on my individual skills, but they always kept it balanced where I was always having fun doing it. So I was working at it, getting better, but I enjoyed being around. I love going to practice. I love being around my teammates. So that type of, the way I was taught the game was there was no real end game. It was about getting better individually, helping the team improve, and also enjoying the journey, enjoying that process of winning and losing, both. Understanding that when you compete and you're going to win and you're going to lose, but you have to learn how to deal with both. And so I had, like I said, tremendous influences with my coaches, my mom and dad, and my siblings. We're all involved in sports, growing up together. So we shared those experiences with each other, and I think there's a lot of carryover from sports, from team sports into real life situations.
I think that's special about you, throughout your career of just enjoying the process and not being super focused on the outcomes. I mean, how do you think you develop that kind of mindset? You talked about that when you were younger. How did that kind of develop?
Well, I think when you're younger, it's hard. I mean, people are trying to teach you, but you don't learn it till later on. I'm probably still learning how to live my life that way. Yeah, but I think it's just being in the moment, going through, having some great wins and celebrating, and then having the frustrating feeling of losing and coming up short and failing, and understanding the difference that they're very similar. The emotions are different, but the process is the same, right? So you have to go through it. So it takes time. I think, especially over these last 2 years with what we've all been through in the world with the pandemic, a lot of those cliches that people use, like day by day and take it easy, all these things all of a sudden take on a new meaning. And it's really the way we try to aspire to live anyway. But like I said, I think sports always, for me anyway, brought out that those real life experiences. They really tested you on how to conduct yourself in both winning and losing. I was always taught to win with humility, and give your opponent a lot of credit, and of course appreciate the fact that you want to feel good about it, but be humble. And then when you lose with dignity and grace, and then be complimentary of your opponent and give them credit, and then try to beat them the next time. Try and make some adjustments. So I think in a way that's what we try to do each day in our lives is, we all wake up in the morning, have this kind of plan how we want things to go, and then things will change as the day unfolds, and being able to adjust and adapt to that's important.
And like, what about St. John's and Coach Carneseca drew you to commit there?
Yeah, so I met Coach Carneseca when I was probably like 11 years old. I attended his basketball camp. Um, so he was one of the guys that taught me a lot. He was a great lecturer, told a lot of great stories about players that he coached, both at St. John's. He was also coaching the ABA with the Nets. He coached Rick Barry, and so I heard a lot of great stories as a young kid. And then as I progressed through high school, um, he recruited me, and just always felt really comfortable with him because I had known him, had a previous relationship with him. So it made my choice pretty easy. I visited Duke, Villanova, Virginia, and Louisville was the other schools I visited. But at that point in time, I had everything I needed right there at home. I had a great family. I wanted to stay close to home and be with my family. So St. John's wound up being a natural choice for me.
Was there like a story that he told that you kind of just still hold on to?
Oh, a lot of uh, I mean, referring to basketball, but life lessons. Coach Carneseca always talked about the fundamentals, um, passing, catching, um, seeing the play before it happens. He was very big on being an unselfish teammate. Always gave praise to people sharing the basketball. Was always teaching why there's how you can influence a game without scoring, cutting and playing without the basketball and not over dribbling. So all the unselfish facets of the game, he was a big teacher of that. And then just a very consistent, humble, grateful man. That's over to he's 97 now, and just incredible consistency of how he has lived his life of being kind, caring for other people, being polite, having time for everybody, being able to sit down and talk to people, and whether you're CEO of the company or custodian in the gym, everyone to him was important, just the same. So the big, I mean, he taught me so much about basketball, but really the way he has lived his life, um, with dignity and grace and class and caring for other people, just a wonderful example beyond being a Hall of Fame coach.
Yeah. So, I mean, it speaks a lot to your game. I mean, you are a very fundamental player, a lot of off the ball movement. And we see that being successful with guys like Steph in the league. But how underrated do you think that is in just focusing on the fundamentals?
It's the most important thing in anything is getting a foundation, um, getting a foundation of skill, being understanding what your strengths are, and what your weaknesses are, being aware of that and accountable for that. And then, in basketball, learning how your skills and your talents fit with the other players to make your team successful. That really becomes the key. I think we all want to, shine and have our skills used and appreciated. But when you're on a team, you have to understand how those skills fit with the other four players. That's always the key to success. And the more you're able to, not only have a multitude of skills, but being able to play, like you said, without the basketball, like a Steph Curry or Klay Thompson. Those guys can play with any style of play in any generation with any type of other players because their skill sets are so adaptable, because they don't need the basketball in their hands to score. They don't need to dribble, 20 to 25, 30 times to get their shot off. So those type of players are winning players in any style of play in any generation.
And I mean, for you, like that year of 1988 to 1993 with the Warriors, you were averaging 25 points per game, making 5 playoff appearances. What do you think clicked for you during that time?
Combination of health, and back then, we had probably 5 to 7, maybe 8 years of prime years, where now guys have 15 prime years. But yeah, it was just a combination of me finding my game, um, being in the right situation, playing for the right coach and the right style of play with great teammates. And that's why you play. Those things are hard to come by, because in pro sports, you have very little control of who you're going to play with, who you're going to play for. So when those things do happen and they click, it's very much appreciated.
What do you think was so special about that style of play in that trio?
Yeah, with Mitch and Tim and myself, and then Nelly coaching, it was just a great combination. Don Nelson was way ahead of his time, from an offensive standpoint. What we're watching today, and everyone call small ball. Nelly was doing it in the early '80s with Milwaukee, and those great teams he had in Milwaukee with Sidney Moncrief and Marcus Johnson and Paul Pressey and Bob Lanier and all these great players, Brian Winters. And then he came out to the Bay Area, and we even played smaller with myself, Tim Hardaway and Mitch Richmond and Rod Higgins. And, we had so many great players. But Nelly was always tinkering with the offensive lineups and trying to find mismatches and style of play that could, kind of mess with the other team and dictate tempo and dictate style of play. And he was a master at that. So having those, the right complement of talents and personalities, and then you have a coach like Nelly that can put his imprint and his style of play and his genius to it. It was a nice run.
I mean, you're now known as like one of the best shooters in NBA history. When did you know that your shot was going to be something special?
It was something I always was pretty good at, actually, when I was a youngster. Something I always practiced a lot. I actually not quite sure what else you would practice when you're by yourself.
Yeah.
Besides, that's all I did anyway. So if I was in the gym or in the park by myself, I would just shoot and chase my ball down and shoot and shoot and shoot. I always felt comfortable. I always had a feeling that I knew why I missed, even at a young age. If I missed a shot, I always in my mind felt like I knew what I did wrong. But I think, again, it goes back to the early coaching I received as a youngster, as far as the fundamentals of technique, form, consistency, balance, backspin and arc, all those things I was taught as a youngster. And then the younger you're taught it, and the more you practice, obviously you're going to get better at it. And shooting really is having the proper form and technique, the proper routine, having the ability and the discipline to do the repetition needed. And then as you do those proper, put in those hours and the repetitions, that becomes muscle memory. So that's basically how you become good at it. And then, obviously being able to shoot contested and off the dribble and off moving without the basketball, off screens, and all those other things become, part, the important part. But the fundamentals is getting the proper routine, form, repetition, and making it become muscle memory.
And like, in your prime, when you've kind of almost mastered the art of shooting, it's like, how do you go about like trying to improve or like practice your shot when you're already so good at it?
Yeah, I had very good practice habits because I was taught them at a young age. And in my college, same thing. I would always work on my individual skills, always go back at night and shoot the shots I was going to shoot in the game, and do them at game speed. And then in the NBA, I took it to a whole different level where my off-season training I really picked up tremendously. And then I always tried to practice harder than I was going to play. So by the time I got to the game, it was not as much exertion from a physical standpoint, from a mental standpoint. So I really concentrated not only off season but even in season to practice harder than I had to play. So come game time, I felt like whatever situation presented itself, I was prepared for.
And you talk about, training and stuff, like, were there ever times that you felt that the outcomes weren't reflective of your training, and how did you kind of overcome that mentally?
Well, that's part of the journey is you don't always get immediate results. You have to have the discipline, the work ethic to put in to maintain your workload no matter what the outcome is. And that's important in any thing you do in life, but being able to sustain that workload on a daily basis, no matter what the outcome is how you establish that that really is competitiveness. Being able to work and compete, whether you win or lose. And if you do it long enough, you'll start winning more.
But like, going through that process, I mean, like, what kind of kept you going?
I think I always found joy in, like, so to me, like if I was in the gym, I wasn't looking at the clock. I really didn't really have anywhere else to go. It didn't really matter to me. I was, finding joy in the work itself, not feeling like, it was a burden on me. The only time it was tough is if you're injured. If physically you're not feeling up to it, then it's not as enjoyable. But I always found, whether it be practice, shoot arounds, all the stuff that comes with the process to get to the game, I enjoyed it. Some people don't, but I always enjoyed that process. And so it wasn't that hard for me to maintain that.
And just talking about lows, even losing streaks are hard to endure, especially as a coach. You had one of those, 11-game losing streak with St. John's as a coach, and then you go on to win against, Villanova and Duke, which were, ranked number 1 and number 4 at that time. How did you kind of use what you learned as a player to help your team kind of get through those times?
Yeah, I always found playing was much easier for me to deal with winning or losing. I think because you're exerting all your energy in the game itself, and when you're done, you're physically tired, and you just kind of are in that routine where you just get ready for the next game, whether it be practice. So you're exerting a lot of physical energy. Much tougher for me as a GM or a coach, because you're somewhat removed. You're trying to help your players, trying somewhat to control the situation with them and for them. So it's more of a frustrating process for me. It was. So the coaching part, I found myself not sleeping as well as I did as a player, and always feeling like I could have done more. And it's more in your mind. So your mind never stops thinking. So that was a tougher process for me. And then you're just trying to, take care of your entire roster too. So it's not, as a player, your responsibility is a little more defined.
Yeah.
You want to influence a lot as a player, but whatever your role is, you can, really specifically concentrate on that. But as a coach, you're just in charge of so many things. So, and I think it's a lot more mental.
Yeah.
There's so many more things going on in your mind and not just in the game, maybe just as much more away from the game as during the game. So that was a tougher process for me. Enjoyable, much different and much tougher for me. The curse and the gift is, I love playing so much that everything I've done since then, even some really great situations, just never lives up to that same feeling I had when I was a player. So that's something. You have to adjust your expectations. But when you love something so much and you try and do other things, that it never really lives up to that.
And, you go on an 11-game losing streak, and then you go up and you beat, the #1 team in the country. How does that work?
Yeah, that was perseverance, being accountable, being consistent. Did not really focus on. Obviously, we all knew we lost 11 in a row. I'm sure there was some close games in there. We broke down each game individually and treated every day somewhat the same, where we're going to correct our mistakes. Never varied on how hard we worked. Always got our practice schedule, stuck to it, and then finally broke through. So that was a test in discipline and perseverance, and not giving up, and just hanging in there. That's keeping people together is important during that point in time.
Definitely.
Sometimes, and then using different type of coaching techniques, whether it be some days we're lighten up and take it easy and trying to have fun and just enjoy what's going on for that day. Other times you try and get a little more intense and pick up the pace and practice and things like that. But I think I went back to that for me. I try to put myself in their position, right, and have not so much sympathy but empathy, and trying to get them through that process. And the one way I've always dealt with losing streaks and things like that is just keep working and work even harder, and just stay the course and keep a positive mindset, and stick to your routine. I think that's really important too. It's not like I said earlier, you have your routine, you have your daily habits, and whether you win or lose, you do them no matter what. And that's really what being a professional is all about, is no matter what's going on around you, you're able to go do your job.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of JTA because I like how he exemplifies that, and you see where there's days where he might not always get those minutes, but the days that he does, he goes in and he kills it. And I think that's really inspirational for people that are going through things like that, because I think that's really what it is. It's about staying ready, because you might not always get your time to shine, but when you do, it's important that you show out during those moments.
Yeah, you never know when opportunity is going to show up, and then you got to be ready whenever that might be. And the way to stay ready is to keep a positive mindset, keep yourself in top condition, have your skills sharp as ever, be mentally prepared, and you enter every game like you're going to play that night. You have to be mentally and physically prepared each and every day. Again, that's what being a pro is all about. It's not sometimes, it's all the time.
Yeah. And you've experienced the game from the perspective of a player, a coach, and now an analyst. How do you think your perceptions of the game has kind of evolved?
I always appreciate the games I'm watching, whatever that might be. Kind of look at it from a just an analytical standpoint, from just observing, and appreciate what they're trying to accomplish. And then it's much easier when you're not totally attached to that team. So emotionally, you're not invested. So it's a lot easier to just watch and casually, naturally see what's going on in the game. I think when you're competing, whether it be playing or coaching, you got so much tunnel vision that you don't really see everything that's going on. You're so concentrated on winning that possession, getting a defensive stop, executing a offensive play, that you're not so aware of everything else that's going on. I think when you're, for like me, now when I'm watching TV, I'm very much more aware and open-minded what's going on all over the place, as opposed to being focused on one team or the other, or one individual player, and just really watching the game as a whole. And I sleep much better.
What separates you from other players during your time was your high basketball IQ. And I was just kind of curious, where do you think like you built that? Because I think what separates a lot of people is that basketball IQ factor. And I think it's hard to get. So where did that come from for you?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is really just playing a lot, putting yourself in different situations over and over again, where when something does come up on the court, you feel like you've been there before. You've already seen it. You've reacted to it. Being able to, defensively, offensively run, scripted out plays or defensive schemes, and then also being able to play freelance. Being able to do both. Being able to play at the end of, say a close game in the last 2 minutes, where it's all about execution and running half court offense, or in a fast-paced, high-scoring game in the middle of the game, second, third quarter, which is freelance up and down. Being able to do both, also realizing the changes that need to be made within the same game. I always feel like shot selection is always a huge part of success offensively, defensively. Not only individual one-on-one defense, but understanding the team concepts. It's really important, being a team defender, knowing if you double team and knowing how you're playing pick and rolls, all these different things that go into it, being able to execute all those things quickly, make quick decisions without getting thrown off your game.
Now being an analyst, like where did this passion for broadcasting come from?
I think it was just a natural progression. I had worked, after I finished working at the Warriors as a GM, I was asked to work at ESPN. I did that for 3 years. I did both studio work, and I did games, and I did radio. So I got a lot of good experience through that. And then when I went back to coach at St. John's, when I came back to the Bay Area, there was an opening here with the Warriors. So it was kind of a natural fit, natural progression. It's an incredible opportunity. I love covering this team. Not only are they great players, great guys to watch and to emulate, and just a really cool group of guys to cover. Steve Kerr is a classy guy, and so it's a lot of fun. And I don't have to travel, which I love. So it's really an ideal situation for this point in my life.
And lastly, like what advice do you have for young kids that are looking to pursue basketball at a high level?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think we covered a lot. Is have a good routine. It doesn't have to be the most strenuous. It doesn't have to be physically exhausting, but consistently push yourself beyond your limits a little bit each day. Work on all your skills. I think, especially in practice, important to work on your weaknesses. It's always important to keep your strengths, but really important to work on your weaknesses in practice. So as you do that, you can eliminate some of your weaknesses and start using them in the games. And I was always taught, when you're playing in competitive games, play to your strengths. That's not the time to experiment if you're if your left hand is working. You know, make sure you master that in practice before you do it in the game. You know, being aware and understand, you know, how you can help your team when you're not playing competitively, and most importantly, you know, if you do those, if you prepare yourself the right way, you have develop your skills and are aware of your abilities. Then I think that allows you to enjoy the game. Everyone says make sure you have fun, but there's a way to have fun. It's not easy to have fun if you're not playing or if you're not enjoying it. But the way to enjoy it is to develop your skills. So when you put in positions during the game or in practice, that you're comfortable in that position, and that's a lot of times that's it's unscripted, right? It's going to be a situation you're put in, but if you do the right proper practice and proper preparation, you will feel comfortable in somewhat unknown situations.
Great advice. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate your time.
Good job. My pleasure.